Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we are joined by Scott Aaron, and I'm excited to have him share a little bit about his story, entrepreneurial genes and in the blood, and got started at an early age. So really excited for this conversation. So without further ado, Scott, you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely, Liam. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Scott Aaron, originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, now in Marlton, New Jersey, just outside. And my wife and I own and operate a marketing firm called BYOB Agency, which there's multiple arms to it. We have memberships, we have courses, consulting, speaking, but it's all about helping people grow and love the business that they own online. It wasn't always in that way. As you alluded to, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I got started in 1998, 1999 when I was about 19 years old in the health and wellness industry. So I was a traditional brick and mortar business owner from 1998 until 2016. So 18 years. In the health and wellness game as a gym owner, personal trainer, sports nutritionist, and a lot of ups and downs, made millions, lost millions, a couple divorces along the way that led to finding, the woman of my dreams and my best friend and my business partner, my wife. Became a father during that time period, lost a house, filed for personal bankruptcy. It's the stories that maybe you don't hear too often. A lot of what we see online right now is the smoke and mirrors, or the highlight reel, as I call it. I like keeping it real instead of just sharing the highlight reel, because something that I live by is that your failures will open up the doors to your successes. So yes, we've been very successful in what we do, what we teach, and what we're growing. But I've had many more failures along the way that allowed us to get to this point. And going back to the original thing that I stated of what my wife and I are doing now, is we really want to help people love the business that they're running and make it a small and mighty one where it doesn't require a huge team to do so. High revenue, low overhead, which equals high profit. And that's what we're starting to really strive to teach people now.
Yeah, that's fascinating concept, right? Because everyone wants to grow, 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 and adds overhead, and probably too quickly, and ends up shackling their companies. But as you look back at your journey, your parents were also involved in health and wellness, I believe, right? And was there anything from their journey? Was theirs as up and down as yours was, or was it kind of just slow and steady?
Well, I was along the ride with them. So my mom was a school teacher until I was born. And then she, raised me. My sister was born 2.5 years later. And then when we were, when I was around, I would say 7 or 8, she started to go back to work. She was in sales, worked at a clothing sales at a local boutique. My dad was always an entrepreneur. He only owned his own businesses. He was in the latex glove business, supplying medical practices, dental practices, medical gloves, and they were early in the game in this. This was like the early 1990s, late 1980s. So they were actually one of the largest distribution chains on the East Coast at the time. And then my father broke partnership in the mid to late 90s and started to run a company for someone else in the physical rehabilitation industry, much like NovaCare, which a lot of people are familiar with. My dad was always into health and wellness. He got me into fitness. He was always doing it as a hobby. It was just something he was passionate about. But what happened was he ended up partnering with the wrong person. They ended up getting involved and caught up in a insurance fraud case that my dad ended up serving 2.5 years in federal prison for being involved. And in the 6 months between him pleading guilty to then going away, in that 6-month time period, he ended up buying and taking over a failing health club in downtown Philadelphia which he was basically grooming me to take over the family business. So it was in my name. My parents had no credit at the time because of the federal investigation. So as a sophomore in college, I was groomed to be a business owner. So my father went away. I stepped in. So I had to learn from a very young, impressionable age what it means to be an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of the success that I've had in my career, always forging ahead, being resilient, is because I had nothing to compare it to. I never worked for anyone. So even though I was going to college full time, getting my degree in human resources, outside of that, I was spending more time running our gym. So I was getting both the education of being a professional, but I was getting the real world education running an entrepreneurial business, dealing with people, managing our staff, having to get there early, having to stay late, having to drive down and solve a problem that normally someone else would have to go solve. And again, I learned more from the mistakes that were collectively made as a company. My mother, my father, my cousin who was involved, myself, than any one person. What I did learn the most is the difference between running a profitable business and running a business that was staying afloat. And I think the other big thing is knowing when to get out. So for myself and my family, we didn't get out in time. Now, if I backtrack that, we had the opportunity to. We ended up selling two of our first two gyms. We sold them for $1 million in 2003, which would have been the perfect opportunity to take the net profit and do something else. Maybe not so much fitness related, maybe something on a smaller scale. But we decided to open up a larger gym outside of the city. So our two gyms were in the city. So walking traffic, people didn't have to worry about parking. Like, we were in neighborhoods, which means we were the neighborhood gym. But we went to the outskirts of the city where, you had to drive a couple miles to get there. We had a parking lot. We weren't floor level. You had to walk up a flight of stairs to get to the gym. It was an old building that was falling apart. But also, the model of the gym had changed. When we started our gym in 1998, there was no Planet Fitness. There was no 24-hour fitness. There was no Snap Fitness. There weren't these little chains that could afford to charge a very, very small monthly fee to handle the hordes of people that would come there, right? So we were more of the boutique business. We would charge $40, $45 a month, smaller locations, 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. And even our largest location, the one that I closed in 2016, was around 11,000, almost 12,000 square feet. We were still only charging $37, $38 a month. So, but the overhead was something that a family-owned business couldn't compete with a larger conglomerate. Our overhead was $13,000 to $15,000 a month. So we had to bring in that amount of money off the top before anything was ever, handed down to us, which in the 12 years that I owned that gym, I never took one paycheck. I was the first one there, the last one to leave, and the first one to never get paid. But those are some of that happens all the time. So for me, when I ended up, my parents ended up getting divorced during this process. It was a lot of stress and strain on the family. They divorced in 2009. A year and a half later, my cousin sold his shares back to the gym to pursue his own business. So he has a bookkeeping company now. So it was just myself and my dad. And, it became turbulent at times because it was my head on the chopping block. It was my credit that was on the chopping block. So in 2014, I made the decision to break partnership with my father. He had a minority stake in the gym, And I told him, I said, I'm going to be absorbing, your percentage of the gym, which wasn't worth anything. So there was nothing to absorb. And I said, I'm going to be taking over the gym myself, and you're going to have to find somewhere else to train. And he didn't argue. I think a part of him knew that as I was maturing with age, I would want to do something on my own. And when I started to uncover the mess that had been building for, at that point, about 8 years, I realized that um, I was fighting a losing battle. And that's when I met with my attorney in the beginning of 2016. And I uncovered about almost a $500,000 of liability debt that had my name attached to it. And mind you, in 2013, that's when I started to build my online business, which was very quickly superseding my in-person business. And I'm like, well, if I can make all this money online, where I don't have to have employees, I don't have to be at the gym, 14 hours a day, I should start leaning into this. And when my lawyer, financial advisor, and accountant, we kind of had like a group meeting, we all determined that the best thing to do for me and my family and my future, because again, this is 6 years ago. I was 37 years old. I was really looking to establish a life that I was proud of and happy with. And I wanted to reduce the stress of running a failing business that was losing $3,000 a month that I was affording to keep open with my own profits from my business outside of it. It was determined, because of the things that I was attached to personally, that I did have to file for personal bankruptcy, which I wasn't afraid of. I didn't hear, you're going to have to file for bankruptcy. I heard in my mind, you're about to be set free from all of the last 12 years of stress and strain and ups and downs and uncertainties, to start developing and living life on your own terms. So on July 1st of 2016, I filled out the paperwork to file for bankruptcy, closed the gym 30 days later, and I got discharged in October 15th of 2016. So almost 6 years ago. And it was the greatest decision I could ever have made. I learned a lot being in the health and wellness industry, and a lot of this skill set that I learned in the 60,000 plus hours of working with people one-on-one as a coach, I applied to everything that I was doing online, but running the business that my wife and I have now, and what we're able to teach people. I had real world, real life experience. I've made millions, lost millions. I know exactly how to make money. I know how to create programs. And when you learn from someone that's been there and done that, but is still in the trenches, Nancy and I, my wife, we are never satisfied with where we are. We know that there's I love the quote, the peak of one mountain is the bottom of the next. So we're constantly climbing. What can we learn? What can we help other people with? And I would say, again, going back to something that I stated earlier, is that those failures that I learned, being in control of your own destiny, entrepreneurship is not a straight line, and you're going to have to make pivots at certain points, and you have to just trust yourself enough to know that it's going to end up working out in the end. It may not be immediately, but it will work out over time. So I really feel that understanding exactly those specific things have helped us get to where we are today.
Fascinating. And this is where I get to apply a gross oversimplification of that 12 years, right? But it sounds like tons of tribulations and trials that you went through, essentially learning through testing, what worked, what didn't work, how to become successful as an entrepreneur. Sounds like in those 12 years, the money that was earned was reinvested back into the business.
Absolutely.
The biggest one going into the big gym, right, outside the city limits, different business model, which you then had to go and figure out as well. And then ultimately exited as you saw that it was keeping afloat as opposed to helping enable you live the life you wanted to live. Is that fair?
Yeah. You reinvest in different ways. Did we expand the gym and get new equipment? Absolutely. The way that my wife and I reinvest in our current company is much different than the way that we invested in a brick and mortar business. It's two different things because, again, in a brick and mortar, it requires different types of investments, expansion, especially in a gym, new equipment, general managers helping other people run the organization. When you're running an online business, as we are right now, there are other investments that need to be made in masterminds, in business coaches, in tools and resources that you may have, but also team. And, we have gone the contractor route rather than the employee route, because as you and I were talking off air, there's a lot of people that end up hiring too quickly and grow and try to scale too quickly. And they haven't established a healthy of enough of a baseline reoccurring revenue, which is what my wife and I really focus on for ourselves: leveraged income, reoccurring revenue. So we know exactly what can be invested, what can be replenished back into the business, and also what can be saved. We're big savers. Money comes and money goes, but you do have to plan for your future. I started working with a financial advisor 16 years ago. I was 26, 27 when I started, and I'm working with the same advisor now. He's been through my whole journey. So I've been a big believer in setting yourself up for your future success by what you're doing right now. So again, every business looks different. So different investments need to be made on a personal and business side. And you always have to think about, is this what's best for right now? But also, is this going to lead me to where I want to be 3 to 5 years from now?
You talked about reoccurring income revenue, right? Also called passive income in a lot of ways, but when it's coming from a business, obviously there's a big active component to that. When you're transitioning from the gym to the marketing, I'm guessing that was either subconsciously or a part of what you were looking to do in doing that, right? It sounds like you ran both simultaneously and saw differences side by side. And since then, there's been a choice to, pursue that pretty heavily. Can you walk us through kind of that decision making that got you there, right? We've got a little bit of that, but then also, what are those other things in that reoccurring bucket, right, that you're looking at, or businesses that kind of fit that model?
Yeah. So the big thing of what allowed me to switch from running the brick and mortar to really going all in with the online business was actually a question that someone asked me. They said, if you get sick or injured where you physically can't train people or get to the gym, how would you earn a living? And it scared the crap out of me because my body was my bank account. If I physically couldn't work someone out, if I physically couldn't get to the gym, I wasn't making money. So, what else could I do outside of that? And that's when I realized having the flexibility, having the options that one does when you run a business online from the comfort of your home, it gives you more time flexibility, but also gives you more opportunity. Because again, no matter what people may think right now in 2022, that the internet is saturated, there is still so much room for growth right now. There's so many people in the world that can be impacted by the gift and the offerings that you have. You haven't even scratched the surface. As far as the reoccurring revenue model, I was always used to active income, meaning if I trained you, you paid me, I made money. So I was talking about it with my wife. I want to be able to not create quote unquote money when we're sleeping, but I want to create a business model where we have different offerings that are meeting people where they are at the level of the business that they're in, that puts them on some sort of reoccurring monetary model, whether it's a subscription. Think about any of the successful businesses right now. I mean, look at BJ's, right? For you to shop at BJ's, you have to have a wholesale membership. When you have Netflix, you are paying a monthly fee. Any of those reoccurring types of situations. So when my wife and I were building out our value ladder, which is something that every business owner needs to look at. And it always starts with some sort of free offering, some sort of bump offer or tripwire to a lower ticket, something that ends up going all the way up the line. We said to ourselves, what can we create that is going to fill a void or solve a problem that our ideal client avatar would have? Now, there's a ton of different business models, and a lot of people, and this is something that we learned ourselves, we were doing a lot of paid in full type stuff. And again, if someone has the option to pay in full and never have to worry about the money ever again, 80% of the time, they're going to take that option, which is great because you get a good bump of income coming in. But I will tell you, as a business owner, as quick as that money comes in, it's going right out the door to something else. So Nancy and I really sat down and said, how can we start to build a legacy type business where we have new people coming into the business month after month, year after year, that is going to be building the residual side, leveraged side of our income, where if we want to go away for 2 or 3 weeks, we can. If we want to change an aspect of our business, we can. We don't have to be handcuffed to it because, again, even when I switched over to the online model, I was doing a lot of one-on-one consulting. And one-on-one consulting is just like personal training. You pay me, I teach you what I teach you, and then I'm never seeing the money again. So it's been a shift for me because Nancy and I have since created 4 reoccurring revenue models. We have 2 lower ticket revenue models. We have a mid-tier revenue model. And then we actually have 2 high-level tier models. So again, when you have a business on reoccurring revenue, we have a marketing agency that is a monthly reoccurring revenue for our team to help the businesses that we help show up online. We have a year-long group coaching program that is a 12 payment commitment. So it's a year commitment that's broken down into 12 monthly installments. We have 2 low-tier memberships that are both on reoccurring revenue. Now, you're not locked in. You can cancel at any time. And we also have our own social media posting platform that's attached to our marketing agency that is a low-ticket subscription model that people can cancel at any time. But when you start to accumulate 50 people in this, 30 people in that, 50 people here, all of a sudden you're making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month of reoccurring revenue. So you start to see what is possible. If we just focus on those reoccurring streams, where you don't need a huge team to do that, because again, a lot of the subscription models, a lot of the membership models are based on the trainings that you do. So you have a couple team members that help you with maybe a support email that you have, or a Facebook group that you're running that's notifying of them. And that's the thing. You are in control of your own destiny. When you have a business that is running on a reoccurring or leveraged income basis, not only can you grow and scale that much quicker than something that's working on more active income, because you don't want to have to sell all the time. You want to have pockets of selling, which is, launching something like we're doing that right now. We have a workshop coming up at the end of June. It's a 3-day workshop where we're teaching people how to repurpose content from making one video into micro pieces that is leading into our posting platform, which is $49 a month. And we launch it about 2 or 3 times a year. We get between 50 to 75 people every time we launch it, which means we add an additional $2,500 to $3,500 a month of recurring revenue. You do that 3 times, you're looking at almost an $8,000 a month bump in recurring revenue from one stream. So when you start to do that, you start to see the bigger picture. You can start to envision, okay, in 24 months from now, we could be at $85,000 or $90,000 a month, where we're generating over $1 million a year of passive reoccurring revenue. But at the same time, you're able to make smarter investments when you have a stable income. So when you're running an online business that is built on the backs of passive or of active income, where you're having to sell all the time, you have one-on-one coaching, you're doing a speaking engagement here, a workshop there. Now that money is in flux all the time, because one month you may make 40K, the next month you may make $5,000. So if you're able to grow and scale a reoccurring revenue-based business much quicker, because you know what's coming in. You know, if there's a drop in membership, you know how much revenue you're going to be losing. But also, if you have more people coming in, you know you're going to have a bump in revenue. So you can bring on a new team member. You can hire a Facebook ad person. You can hire a PR firm for a couple of months, because now you know what the profit margin is that you're running at. So you know exactly how much of a budget you can work with, rather than having that active income business where it's always in flux and you're never knowing, which, as you said, a lot of business owners get themselves into that category of overcommitting and overpaying for things. And now they're having to restructure all over again, because now they're running in a negative instead of running at a positive.
It's really fun to see the excitement and passion that you have, right? And it's like, it's this, hey guys, I've been there, I've done it, it's hard, and I have no desire to go back. And look at this amazing thing that I've been growing and is scaling like crazy, and let me share with you. And that's so awesome to see that passion come through in a meaningful way. As we're wrapping up here, a lot of the listeners are probably in that active business today, right? Whether it's someone who owns their lawn care, or a tradesperson, or a coach, right? Where that one-to-one relationship, where that, active component is a key. What's one piece of advice that you would give them, either to managing their business for growth or transitioning, and how to think about that?
The one big thing that my wife and I always talk about is creating something that people want instead of something that you think people need. And there's a big difference between wanting and needing. So understanding what your skill set is and your zone of genius and the marketplace that you want to present yourself to, it is much easier to scale and grow a business that is filling the want of something rather than the need that you think someone has to have. So in respect to what we teach, people kept asking us, I want to learn how to create a proper opt-in. I want to learn how to create a sales funnel. I want to learn how to create an email sequence. I want to learn how to properly optimize my website. So when people are telling you what they want to learn, and you create something that's based around teaching that, it's going to be much easier to scale a business that is solving someone's problem that they're having, rather than trying to sell something to people that you think they need based on what you want them to need. So it's understanding who you're marketing to. Number two, what their struggle is. Like, what is that pain point? What is that thing that is causing the kink in their hose that is stopping the progress of their business? So and I do a lot of market research, and I do it on LinkedIn. I ask questions every week through LinkedIn polls. So I'm constantly taking a pulse of my network, seeing what they're struggling with, and understanding if that struggle falls into our zone of genius with what we can teach. It's easier to promote and allow people into something that you have, that it's going to be a very easy trigger for them to pull to say, yes, I'm going to invest in that, because that is something that I actually want right now. It's not something that I need. So for all the business owners that are listening to this, really start thinking about the want of your ideal client instead of the need of what you think that they want. So I constantly talk about the passenger side perspective versus the driver side perspective, the DSP versus the PSP. The driver side perspective is, again, your point of view of what you know that you're good at and what you want someone to need from something that you have to offer. We always focus on the passenger side perspective. We're consistently putting ourselves on the other side of the computer screen. So we're constantly putting ourselves in the shoes of the other person so we can resonate with them. We put ourselves 3 years, 3 years in rewind. Where were we 3 years ago? What were those things that we wish we had at our fingertips that would have made the transition or the scaling of our business that much easier? And how can we present that to people right now so we can get them from A to Z in a much more streamlined and progressive way, where they don't have to make the bad investments that we did. They don't have to make the mistakes that we did. We can literally shorten the learning curve of getting them to where they want to be by taking them down the same success path that we've gone down. So, in total of that, really understanding the want and the desire of your ideal client instead of the need of what you think you have to offer them that they're going to jump all over. So really understanding your ideal client from head to toe will allow you to scale and grow a membership, a subscription, a course, a mastermind, a group coaching program much quicker, because you're solving a problem that people are actually having that they want to learn how to get rid of.
So for those who are listening who are like, that's great, but I want you to tell me more. I want to be like, how do I dive in, Scott? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. Any one of our websites. My personal website is scottaaron.net. But you can also go to our agency website, which is thetimetogrowth.com. It has everything that we do with our mastermind, our agency, our posting platform. And you can just find me on social. You search Scott Aaron, you'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, obviously. And I also have a podcast on iTunes called Networking and Marketing Made Simple, which I can't wait to have Liam on, and would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Appreciate the time today, Scott.
Thanks, Liam.